Do you want to change your life? Start by stop believing your own excuses, because the truth, even though it hurts, is simple. If you don't have discipline, you don't have control. And if you don't have control, someone else has it for you. Your impulses, your emotions, laziness, fear, the opinions of others, all of them manipulate you like a puppet. And the worst part is that you don't even realize it. We were sold the idea that discipline is a punishment, a robotic routine, a prison for those who don't know how to enjoy life. Lie. Real self-discipline is not a cell, it's a sword. And whoever wields it stops living in reaction and starts living with direction. But I'm not going to lie to you. This is not about motivation. This is not a pretty speech with epic background music. Real discipline doesn't have applause, doesn't have likes, doesn't have witnesses. It's just you at 5 in the morning, sleepy, hungry, doubtful, and yet you decide not to fail yourself. That's power. That's respect. That's identity. This video is not made for you to listen to and say how nice it sounds. It's made to make you uncomfortable, to challenge you, to finally pull you out of that weak and manipulable version of yourself. Because inside there's another version, a firmer one that doesn't negotiate with self-sabotage. And that version is built with discipline, not with brute force, but with clarity, with decision, with purpose. We're going to talk about 8 ways to live with discipline, not because it's trendy or obligatory, but because you've understood that without it, there's simply no freedom. We're going to talk about Stoic philosophy, about behavior psychology, about how to reprogram your mind. But above all, we're going to talk to you, direct, without filters, as you need. Are you willing to look at yourself without lies? Then let's go. 1. Break the mirror of lies. The most dangerous enemy is not the one who yells in your face. It's the one who speaks to you from within with a soft voice. That voice that tells you that it's okay if today you don't do what you promised yourself. That you can do it tomorrow, that you don't feel like it, that it's normal to fail, that you're tired, that nobody will notice. That voice is not your friend. It's a lie wrapped in comfort. Most people fail not because of a lack of ability, but because of the number of excuses they accept as truths. They look at themselves in a dirty mirror, distorted by false beliefs, by unquestioned fears, by justifications that are repeated like mantras. I'm not disciplined. I always quit. I've never been able to change. And you know what happens? If you repeat a lie enough, it becomes your identity. From Stoic philosophy, Epictetus said that it's not things that affect us, but our interpretation of them. That includes the interpretation we make of ourselves. If you see your reflection as someone weak, inconsistent, or mediocre, you will act from that idea. You will confirm that story over and over again. And the most tragic thing is that you will believe that's who you are, but you're not. What stops you is not your lack of discipline, it's the story you tell yourself to justify your lack of action. Breaking the mirror of lies is not a magical act, it's a daily practice. It's looking at yourself with brutal honesty. It's asking yourself bluntly, what part of what I'm telling myself is a well-disguised excuse? What uncomfortable truths am I avoiding? Which version of me am I giving control to? This is where behavior psychology comes in. What you reinforce becomes stronger. Every time you allow yourself to yield to an internal lie, you are reinforcing the habit of self-justification. But every time you confront it and act despite it, you are training your mind to obey your purpose, not your impulses. A simple but powerful exercise is to write down your excuses, all of them, without filter, and then refute them with facts. If you write, "I never finish what I start," look for evidence of when you did. If you say, "I have no willpower," remember times when you did. Your mind needs proof to construct a new narrative, and if you don't have them, then start creating them now. Stoicism also talks about the importance of living according to rational nature. And what does that mean? That you have the ability to observe your thoughts and decide which ones deserve your attention. Not everything you think is true. Not every emotion deserves to be obeyed. Not every impulse is an order. Breaking the mirror of lies is choosing to see your reflection without filters, without adornments, without excuses. It's making yourself uncomfortable. It's stopping treating yourself with pity and starting to treat yourself with respect. Because if you don't take yourself seriously, no one else will. Self-discipline begins there. In that raw moment when you realize that you have been living under a distorted version of yourself, and you decide to break it, not with hate, not with guilt, but with clarity. The next time you hear yourself saying, "I can't," stop. Look at that thought for what it is, a comfortable lie. And remember this, you are not what you think, you are what you choose to do. 2. Make discipline an act of self-love. When you think of discipline, what image comes to mind? A rigid routine, a list of tasks that pressure you, a tough workout? Most people associate it with suffering, with sacrifice, with rigidity. But that's a superficial view. True discipline doesn't come from punishment, but from self-love. And yes, it sounds strange to say it, because we're used to seeing self-love as something soft, like a relaxing bath or a free afternoon. But real self-love doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it demands, sometimes it confronts. Because it's about taking care of yourself, not indulging yourself. And taking care of yourself involves doing what you need, not what you want at that moment. Discipline is precisely that, the ability to prioritize your real well-being over your momentary comfort. It's choosing what builds you, even if it's hard, instead of what slowly destroys you, disguised as immediate pleasure. From Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius said, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this what a self-respecting person would do?" That's a brutal question, because it forces you to look at your actions from another angle. It's not just about willpower anymore. It's about identity. It's about dignity. Do you respect yourself enough to keep your word? Do you value yourself enough not to betray yourself when no one is watching? That's the root of firm discipline. You don't do it because someone else forces you. You do it because you know you deserve it. Because you understand that every action builds or destroys the relationship you have with yourself. Behavioral psychology backs this up. People who manage to maintain long-term habits are not the most motivated. They are the ones who have linked their actions with their identity. They don't say, "I have to exercise." They say, "I am someone who takes care of their body." They don't say, "I have to work." They say, "I am responsible for what I want to achieve." That shift in focus changes everything. Make discipline a reflection of who you are, not just what you do. Because when your habits are aligned with your identity, you no longer need so much strength to maintain them. They become part of you. And instead of fighting with yourself every day, you simply act coherently. And how is that identity built? With small, repeated decisions. Every time you choose to get up on time, eat the right thing, finish what you start, you're telling yourself, "I care enough about myself not to let myself down." That message, repeated day after day, becomes real self-esteem. Not that inflated self-esteem of empty phrases, but the one that comes from coherent action. Self-love is not indulgence, it's meaningful demand. It's having a standard for yourself, not to impress others, but because you know you can do more. Because you refuse to be a mediocre version of yourself. And yes, there will be days when you don't feel like it, days when the world pushes you to stop. But if you treat yourself with respect, you'll keep going. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Make discipline an act of love. Not the kind that feels nice, but the kind that makes you stronger. Because at the end of the day, the only relationship you're guaranteed for life is the one you have with yourself. And that relationship is built or destroyed, one decision at a time. 3. Action rules, not your emotions. If you wait to feel good to act, you're going to lose. Not once, always. Because emotions are volatile. They rise and fall. They come and go. And if your discipline depends on how you feel, then you don't have discipline. You have a mood with a schedule. Do you want real change? Learn to distrust your emotions when they stand between you and what you said you were going to do. It's not about ignoring them. It's about not letting them dominate you. Stoicism was clear on this point. Seneca wrote that whoever is a slave to their emotions is incapable of governing themselves. And self-governance is just what you need if you want a life with direction. Because the path is not always going to be accompanied by motivation, inspiration, or enthusiasm. Most of the time, all you're going to have is fatigue, doubts, and the temptation to postpone everything. That's where your character is measured. Behavioral psychology says that an emotion lasts, on average, 90 seconds. After that, what keeps it alive is the thought that feeds it. Do you know what breaks that cycle? Action. Action kills doubt. Action breaks laziness. Action reconfigures your mental state. But here's the important part. You don't need to do something huge. You don't need to feel invincible. You just need to move. One step, just one, and then another, and another. What starts as a small gesture can turn into an avalanche of momentum, but you won't know it until you get moving. Emotions are information, not orders. You're not obligated to obey them. You can feel insecure and act bravely. You can feel tired and keep going. You can feel frustrated and still do the right thing. That's self-discipline, acting from commitment, not from the emotion of the moment. Do you know how many times an average person says, "I don't feel like it"? Many. And the serious thing is not thinking it. The serious thing is using that as an excuse not to move forward. Make this mental shift. Stop asking yourself how you feel before acting. Ask yourself what needs to be done. Period. It's not about being a robot. It's about being someone reliable, starting with yourself. Do you want to train this mental muscle? Do small things every day, even when you don't feel like it. Wash the dishes, go for a walk, finish that email, do that routine, stick to that schedule. Every action, no matter how small, strengthens your identity as someone who is not dominated by what they feel. Marcus Aurelius put it with brutal clarity. Do what nature requires, without distractions, without delay, without drama. That is, do what you have to do it well, and keep going. Discipline is not the absence of emotions. It's the conscious decision to act despite them. It's when you stop being a leaf blown by the internal wind and become someone who directs their own course, regardless of the weather. And yes, there are days when you're going to feel like you can't, but even on those days you can move a finger, you can make a small decision, you can resist a little more, and that, multiplied by weeks, months, and years, transforms you. Don't live under the dominion of emotions you didn't choose. Live under principles that you decided to follow. Because in the end, the world doesn't respond to what you feel. It responds to what you do. 4. Eliminate masks with logic. We all wear masks. Some we use to protect ourselves, others to please, and others because we convinced ourselves that we are that. But self-discipline demands one thing above all: honesty. You can't change what you're not willing to see. And as long as you keep acting from a false version of yourself, all your efforts will stay on the surface. The most dangerous mask is not the one you put on in front of others, but the one you use with yourself. The one that tells you that you are a victim of circumstances, that your past defines you, that you can't change because that's how you are. These ideas, when repeated, become artificial identities that sabotage your growth from within. If you define yourself as someone lazy, fragile, inconsistent, or insecure, then why would you do anything different tomorrow? Stoicism doesn't seek to make you feel special. It seeks to make you see yourself clearly. Epictetus taught that it's not about appearing virtuous, but about living it. It's not about seeming disciplined, but about being it, even if no one notices. And to achieve that, you need to eliminate the distortions that contaminate your perception of who you are. This is where logic comes in. Not to justify yourself, but to question yourself objectively. Ask yourself, is this idea I have about myself based on reality, or is it an emotional excuse? Am I acting from who I am, or from what I fear to lose? Am I looking to improve, or just maintain an image? Behavioral psychology confirms that our decisions are strongly influenced by the desire to maintain consistency with the identity we believe we have. If you believe you are someone weak, you will act accordingly. But if you change that idea from the root, you can radically modify your behavior. And to do so, you need to question, with logic, every label you have imposed on yourself. A brutally useful exercise is to write down all the limiting phrases you usually repeat to yourself. I'm not good at this. I always quit. I lack willpower. I'm too emotional. I never manage to maintain a habit. Once written, analyze each one as if they were affirmations from another person. Be cold, logical, direct. Is that true? Do you have solid evidence? Could you argue it with facts or only with past emotions? When you let logic in, the masks start to fall. Because most of our excuses crumble when faced with data, and when you can no longer hide behind an image, something more valuable appears: responsibility. Removing masks is not an act of humiliation, it's an act of freedom. It allows you to rebuild yourself from the truth, and the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, is always a better starting point than a comforting lie. Self-discipline doesn't flourish in self-deception. It needs solid ground, clear identity, and a purpose that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. Every time you act to sustain a mask, whether it's of false strength, forced humility, eternal victim, or rebel without a cause, you're wasting energy that you could be using to truly grow. Seneca summed it up like this: prefer to be better rather than seem it. Stop investing time in building false versions of yourself to fit in, please, or avoid judgments. Invest that time in being someone who respects themselves enough to live from the truth, even if it hurts. And yes, removing the mask can be scary, because it means seeing yourself as you are, without adornment, without justification, without pose. But it's also the beginning of all real change, because only from there can you build self-discipline that doesn't depend on masks, but on conviction. 5. Find your strategy. Don't imitate someone else's. One of the reasons many people fail to maintain self-discipline is because they are trying to copy someone else's strategy. They watch a video, read a book, follow someone on social media, and try to apply exactly the same thing, hoping it will work the same for them. But there's a problem. They are not that person. They don't have their context, their history, their way of thinking, or their motivations. And if you ignore that, you end up frustrated, feeling like you are broken, when in reality, what is broken is the plan you tried to copy. Discipline is not a magic formula that applies the same to everyone. It's a personal construction. It's a system that adapts to your strengths, your weaknesses, your rhythms, your priorities. Stoicism understood this well. It didn't talk about universal rules for every day, but about principles that each person should apply according to their reason, their capacity for reflection, and their context. Marcus Aurelius didn't live like Epictetus, and Seneca didn't apply ideas the way Musonius Rufus did, but they all were guided by the same foundations: clarity, purpose, self-mastery. From the perspective of behavioral psychology, this makes sense. People who manage to maintain consistent habits are those who adjust the process to their lifestyle, not those who try to force themselves into other people's molds. That's why it's key to know yourself. Know at what times of the day you are most productive, what environments distract you, what emotions destabilize you, what kind of structure you need. Self-knowledge, not comparison, personal strategy, not mass imitation. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that if you copy exactly what someone else did, you will get the same result. But what you see is just the tip of the iceberg. You don't see the previous failures, the adjustments they made, the times they changed plans, the mistakes that forced them to adapt. Sticking with the exterior and trying to replicate it without looking inside is like using someone else's map for a completely different terrain. You won't get anywhere. Find your own strategy, and for that, you need to test, fail, adjust, observe. It's not glamorous, it's not quick, but it's real. Keep it simple. If a 5-step routine doesn't work for you, reduce it to 2. If getting up early destroys you instead of helping you, find your balance point. If a method causes you more anxiety than results, change. Your goal is not to be perfect, it's to be consistent. And consistency comes from a system you can sustain, not one that crushes you. This also has to do with ego. Sometimes we follow others' methods not because they serve us, but because we want to prove that we can. We want to be like them, live like them, stand out like them. But if your discipline is built from comparison, it will crumble. Because it's not based on you, it's based on an external image, and everything that doesn't come from within breaks when things get tough. Be honest with yourself. Are you applying what works for you, or what you think you should do because someone else does it? Does your system adapt to you, or are you trying to forcefully fit into one that doesn't belong to you? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, it's a good sign. It's showing you where to start building for real. Self-discipline is not a costume you borrow. It's a tailor-made armor, and if you take the time to design it from the truth, with patience, with intention, then you're not just going to sustain it. You're going to make it a part of you. 6. Reclaim your power with a single phrase. Most people don't realize how easy it is to give away their power. They do it every day with phrases that seem innocent but gradually erode their will. I can't. It's too hard. That's just who I am. I've tried before. I don't have time. Each of these phrases is a surrender disguised as a justification. They are excuses that, repeated often enough, become mental chains. They convince you that you're trapped, when in reality, you're just poorly trained. Stoicism teaches that freedom begins in the mind, not in your surroundings, not in what you have or lack, but in what you decide to think and tell yourself. Epictetus, who was born a slave, understood this better than anyone. He didn't choose his circumstances, but he chose how to face them. His teaching is clear. You can't control everything that happens, but you can control how you respond. And that response starts with a single decision, an internal phrase, a declaration of power. When you decide to replace the phrases that weaken you with one that reminds you of who you are and where you're going, something activates. It's not magic, it's neuroscience. Language shapes the way you think, and the way you think determines how you act. If you tell yourself that you can't, your brain will look for evidence to confirm that idea. But if you repeat a phrase affirming your power with conviction, your mind starts looking for paths instead of excuses. That phrase can be simple, but it has to be personal. It has to shake you, ignite you, remind you that you didn't come to this life to live surrendered. It can be something like, I decide who I am, I won't fail myself. Today I'm in charge. This won't defeat me. I respect myself with my actions. It doesn't matter which one you choose. What matters is that you say it with intention and turn it into an anchor, a phrase you can return to whenever fear, doubt, or laziness want to take the wheel. From a behavioral psychology perspective, this relates to the technique of verbal self-regulation. Speaking to yourself in a direct and empowering way in critical moments can reduce impulsivity, strengthen motivation, and increase your tolerance for discomfort. You're not just reacting, you're directing, you're claiming your place in the internal conversation. This isn't about shouting empty affirmations in front of the mirror. It's about choosing a phrase that carries weight, that connects with you, that you can use as a mental sword when you're on the verge of giving up. That phrase won't do the work for you, but it will remind you why you started and why you're not stopping now. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal to remind himself what he should do, what he valued, what he wouldn't allow. That was his method. He wasn't an emperor who commanded only with soldiers. He also commanded himself with words, because he understood that true power isn't in what you can impose on the outside, but in what you can sustain within. So choose your phrase, write it, repeat it, use it whenever you need it. Make it part of your internal language. And when you hear it in your mind, don't say it with doubt, say it with conviction, because that phrase is your reminder that you're not a victim. You're the architect of your life, and the first brick is laid with a single well-spoken word. 7. Walk with fear, but don't stop. Fear is not the problem. Waiting for it to disappear to act, that's the problem. Because if you're waiting to not be afraid to start, then you're never going to start. And if you let fear dictate your pace, you're going to live stuck in a cycle where your decisions will always be reactions, not choices. Real discipline is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to move forward despite it. What paralyzes is not feeling fear, it's surrendering to it. It's when you take it as a sign that you should stop instead of seeing it as a sign that you're right where growth happens. Stoicism never tried to eliminate fear. What it teaches is not to give it control. Marcus Aurelius wrote it this way: if you encounter a difficulty, remember that it is not something that hinders your progress, it is part of the path. That idea changes everything, because it forces you to stop seeing fear as an enemy and start seeing it as an inevitable companion of the process. Psychology confirms it. Fear activates protection mechanisms in the brain, but that doesn't mean you should obey them without question. Your mind is alerting you of a risk, yes, but many times that risk is imaginary. What you fear is not failure, it's others seeing you fail. It's not pain that you fear, it's the discomfort of stepping out of the known. And if you don't face it, fear settles as a pattern. It doesn't disappear, it strengthens. Walking with fear means not waiting for perfect conditions. It means understanding that most important decisions in your life are going to be accompanied by doubts, anxiety, or discomfort. But if your discipline depends on being completely sure to move, then you're using fear as an excuse to stay where you are, and nothing happens there. There you just age in the same version of yourself that you swore to leave behind. There is a fundamental principle in the development of self-discipline. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's action in the midst of fear. Every step you take with fear, even if it's clumsy, even if it's small, is worth more than 1,000 perfect plans that you never executed. Because that step trains you. That step shows you that you can move forward without being 100%, that you can do what you said, even when a part of you screams no. Many wait to feel ready, but the truth is that you're not going to feel ready for what's worth it. The body trembles, the mind doubts, the heart races, and yet you move forward because your mission is stronger than your fear, because your word weighs more than your excuses, because you understand that fear is not a wall, it's a fog, and if you walk, you go through it. Stoicism doesn't ask you to ignore what you feel, it asks you to act from what you choose. And if you choose to move forward, even if you're afraid, then you're forging a discipline that doesn't depend on the internal climate, but on the commitment to your vision. Nobody builds something great from comfort. Nobody transforms into someone strong without going through moments of doubt. But those who manage to change their lives are not those who wait to feel safe. They are those who accept fear as part of the journey and walk with it by their side without letting it direct them. Walk with fear, slowly if necessary, but don't stop. Because every step you take while your voice trembles, while your thoughts race, while your legs doubt, is an act of courage that strengthens your character. And when you look back, you won't remember yourself for what you avoided, but for what you faced head-on. 8. Be your own witness. There comes a time in life when you realize that no one is going to save you. No one is going to magically appear to push you, demand from you, or pick you up when you fall. And not because others don't care, but because that's not their role. The only one who's going to be present in every decision, in every fall, in every attempt, is you. That's why you need to become your own witness. Being your own witness means observing what you do with honest eyes, not from guilt or toxic self-demand, but from responsibility. Because if you're not really looking at how you live, what you do, how you think, then you're acting on autopilot. And no one can develop discipline if they're not even paying attention. The Stoics practice this internal vigilance constantly. Seneca said that every night he sat down to examine his day, not to flagellate himself, but to understand, to adjust, to grow. They didn't expect someone else to evaluate them. They evaluated themselves, because they knew that you can't control what you don't observe, and you can't change what you refuse to see. Psychology backs up this practice. Keeping a personal record, reflecting on what you do and how you react, strengthens self-regulation and creates real awareness about your habits. It helps you distinguish between what you say you will do and what you actually do. And that distance, when you see it clearly, can hurt, but it can also be the engine of change. Being your own witness is to stop lying to yourself. It's accepting when you're failing, not to punish yourself, but to do something about it. It's realizing when you're acting out of fear, laziness, or evasion, and deciding that you're not going to allow it anymore. No one can do that work for you. You can have mentors, books, guides, but at the end of the day, the one who executes, the one who sustains, the one who fulfills is you. And this is where someone disciplined differs from someone who only tries. The disciplined person doesn't need cameras, doesn't need surveillance, doesn't need external pressure, because they have already developed something stronger, the will not to disappoint themselves. They have made an internal pact, and breaking that pact hurts more than any external criticism. When you are your own witness, your standard changes. You no longer do things just for visible results. You do them because it's the right thing to do, because your word weighs, because what you build when no one is watching is worth more than what you pretend in front of others. And that internal consistency becomes your anchor. It's what holds you when everything else wobbles. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be honest. Observe yourself clearly. Recognize your patterns. Congratulate yourself on your progress. Correct yourself without destroying yourself. Support yourself without justifying yourself. That's the practice. That's the invisible habit that separates those who advance from those who stagnate. Marcus Aurelius summed it up in his diary. The soul strengthens when it observes itself with rectitude. Don't expect approval. Don't expect validation. Be a witness to your own process. Look yourself in the eyes every day and ask yourself if today you were who you said you wanted to be. And if you weren't, don't hide. Adjust, improve, try again. Because in the end, when no one else is there, when the outside voices fade away, the only thing that will remain is your conscience, your testimony, your story told by your actions. And if you have the courage to face it, then you already have the most important thing, the power to change. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. If you watched the whole thing, comment, "I am Stoic," as our secret signal to know that you're a true student of Stoicism. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video, and remember, keep cultivating your Stoic mind.